Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to webinar week number 7, day number 1, and Monday. So last week, day number 1 was Wednesday, but day number 1 this week is Monday. We're kickstarting the week with a bang. Absolutely delighted today to be joined by Mr. Jack Collison. Jack, obviously, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. We'll get into a conversation about you and more of your background for people that might be a little less familiar as we move on through the conversation. But for now, people that are joining, coaches, players on the line, firstly, thank you for choosing Beyond Pulse as your daily dose of education. Just myself, Tom Shields today. Mark Wilson is on new baby duty, so we've let him off. He's off the hook today. He's getting a bye. So it's just me and Jack. To the players and to coaches, just quickly turning your attention to our Active Minutes project that has been launched, supported by Nike. And coaches, if you're looking for ways to keep your players engaged during lockdown, or players, if you're looking for ways to prove to your coach how hard you're working during what has been come to be known as separation season, please check out www.beyondpulse.com so you can get some information how you can join in there. But as we said, thank you for joining, and we're going to turn it over to Jack. So, Jack, if you could, mate, for the people, as we said, that may be a little less familiar with you, those on the lines that don't have the same accents as we do, if you could provide a little bit of a background into you, obviously the very unique journey that you've been on so far, and obviously what brought you to where you are right now in Atlanta.
Okay, good stuff. No, firstly, thanks for having me today. Really appreciate it. So hopefully there's one or two good bits to take away. If not, we'll have a bit of fun anyway. So I suppose in terms of me, obviously a young lad over in England with aspirations and dreams to go and play in the Premier League. So started off at Peterborough United, little club over in England. They actually shut down their youth system, so ended up going to their arch rivals, Cambridge. Who eventually shut down their youth system at 16 when I was about to go on full time. So kind of felt like a bit cursed. What's that?
The best of omens.
Yeah, I know. So kind of an interesting start. Fortunately, I was doing quite well at the time, so had a couple of choices to choose a couple of clubs, and ended up signing for West Ham. I think for me, obviously, the history of West Ham in England, bringing through young players, and the opportunity to work with Tony Carr, who brought through the likes of Lampard, Joe Cole, Rio. So my heroes who were sort of playing at the time. So fast forward a bit, ended up going through the youth team, through the reserves, and finally made my debut at 19 in the Premier League. Arsenal away at the Emirates, so chucked in at the deep end, but a great experience. I think Alan Kirbishley's last words before he gave me a tap on the head as I was about to go on was try and get close to Fabregas, which was impossible. But yeah. So I stayed at West Ham then till I was sort of 24, experienced relegation, promotion, being in the team, being a young up-and-comer with the world at his feet, dealing with a bad injury, and eventually ended up leaving West Ham at 24 with a pretty bad knee. I took a year out of football, tried to come back a year later at Peterborough United in League One. I was useless, I was crap, couldn't move. So kind of didn't want to waste my time. I think it was important that I had another go at sort of trying to play. Otherwise, I think there would have been potentially a tinge of regret. So it was important that I tried to come back playing, but I just couldn't do it. And I knew I was struggling, and I never wanted to be one of them who was sort of standing in the way of others, blocking the pathway for the youngsters, and just collecting a check at the end of the day. So I had quite an open, honest conversation with Barry Fry. For those of you who know Barry Fry, a real larger-than-life character. He's got some great team talks on YouTube and that. So I suggest you probably go have a look. And one day I'm in the changing room as a first team player, obviously trying to make an impact as a player. The next day he chucked me in front of the youth team, 20 young lads. Right, this is your new coach, fellas. Good luck, Jack. Good luck, fellas. So I'd already started on my badges because I knew I had a bad knee, so I'd already done my B license whilst playing, and sort of set up my soccer school and things like that, but no real experience of coaching a good level of players. So once again, being chucked in at the deep end and kind of sink or swim, got 20 young lads looking at you saying, right, come on in, impress us, coach. And I had no idea what I was doing, if I'm totally honest with you. Very thankful I had some good people around me. I had Ryan Semple, who's now working at Man City with their under-16s, and a real supportive manager in Kieran Scarf, who's went to Northampton, went to Doncaster, and is back at Peterborough now. In terms of accepting I was pretty useless, giving me sort of guidance and a bit of help, and just letting me go out there and kind of fail and make my mistakes with the youth team. So finally started to find my feet. I jumped on my A license with the FAW, which was incredible and really opened my mind to sort of different methods and really how detailed coaching should be in terms of your session planning and preparing for the week properly. After 18 months, West Ham received a call off Mark Noble. Would you like to come back to West Ham? Our 16s need a new coach. And for me, I felt the time was right. Being at Peterborough it's tough. There's not much money. You're the kit man, you're the bus driver, you're the counsellor. So it's tough at the kind of the bottom end of professional football in England. So the opportunity to go back to West Ham to work with some of the best players in the country, amazing facilities, and obviously somewhere I had really fond memories of as a player. So jumped at the chance. Went back and worked with the under-14s and the under-16s to begin with. Had a year there, which was great in terms of my learning, getting to learn off sort of Terry Wesley, the academy director, and Liam Manning, who's over at New York now, New York City, just to get access to them guys sort of with the under-23s and the 18s, and slowly found my feet at West Ham, and the following season got asked to take the under-18s, which was a great experience because once again the calibre and quality of player really sort of picks up. During the same time I started my pro licence, which I've recently just finished, which was a tough slog, but once again really eye-opening, and kind of come to a bit of a crossroads at the end of that first year with the under-18s at West Ham. The opportunity to come to Atlanta sort of come about. Had a real good chat with Tony Annan and sort of come over and had a look at the place, and it was kind of right, if you don't do it now you're never going to do it, and the opportunity was too good to sort of turn down, and ended up coming to Atlanta in August. So sort of 7-8 months on now, and working with the under-17s there and really enjoying it.
And here we are.
And here we are. Right.
No, mate. Look, it's a fascinating story, and obviously it's a humble recollection of what also included. Obviously, you said you did the FAW coach education pathway, but you're also an international there as well, and skipped that little piece out. So for the players especially, obviously Jack's pedigree is one that he spent time at the very highest level of the game, and the youth game specifically as both a player and coach. So I think the insight is going to be fascinating, and obviously coaches, one of probably the most forward-thinking younger coaches that we have in the US now as well. So we're in for a treat. So Jack, thank you for the info and for the background. I hope for everybody listening it provides a nice kind of reference point to where we're going to go with some of the rest of the conversation. Jack, I'm going to start. We've kind of had a theme throughout this period of lockdown and the webinar weeks that we're putting on, just about kind of inspiration and people that have influenced you as player or coach. Obviously, we were speaking a little bit offline last night, and I said for you, what I'd like you to do, if it's possible, is name an all-time all-star five-a-side team of players, but the characteristic of the players. The characteristic of the players, and maybe how they have influenced the types of messages that you're trying to give to the young players now. So what was it about somebody that you really admired, and how are you using that to influence some of the education, the information, the guidance that you're giving to the kids that you work with now, who are obviously future pros and have that aspiration to kick on? If you could,
Do you know what? It was actually a really good question. It really got me thinking, and I've tried to sort of pick on different traits and characteristics rather than common things kind of coming out. So there might be a couple of surprises in terms of the players. But yeah, no, I'll give it a go. And yeah, it's actually not a bad team on paper. They might be okay. So, so we'll see. So for me, the first one, it was quite obvious, and it would be Mark Noble. Probably the biggest thing is just that passion and real love and enthusiasm for the game. First one out to training every day, last one in, always up to mischief. But when you talk about someone who lives for football, that is your man there. And it's no surprise to see him have 15 years in the Premier League, 15 years at West Ham, 500 appearances nearly now, which is unbelievable in the modern day. But for me, I really put it down for just that enthusiasm to be the first one out there. And I certainly think for him as a young player, when you talk about doing extras and working hard and that extra 15, 20 minutes and how it might sort of rack up over a career, he was certainly one to do that. And might be out there in the morning playing sort of football golf. Okay, it's not really serious, but he's probably hitting an extra 100, 150 passes, different techniques than anyone else is. And you can see with his range of passing how it's helped. And yeah, he's certainly one of them who you'd really look to and say that he loves the game. And that probably comes out sometimes in his competitiveness as well, in terms of setting the standards at training, hated losing, always wanted to be on the winning team, probably the best 2 or 3 trainers every single day. And look, he'll certainly be one who looks back at the end of his career and says that he maximised what he had, reached his full potential.
It's a brilliant start, and it's something I think, especially in the time that we're in right now, where obviously players speaking directly to you guys in lockdown, we're saying that you've got a chance and an opportunity to really achieve what Jack's just referenced, and it's the concept of marginal gains or the aggregate effect of people that that extra 10 minutes, that if it's done every day, if it's done every week, of every month, of every year, like the impact that it has, it's a significant one. So yeah, I love that. Great start, mate. Thank you for that. So 1 down, 4 to go. No,
4 to go, no pressure. I'm going to go for a little bit of a big hitter now. Actually, Teddy Sheringham. Probably not many people know that he finished up at West Ham. Well, I actually think he went to Colchester possibly after it. But 40 years old, he's at West Ham. He's still playing in the Premier League. And although he wasn't featuring much, he was just an incredible person. And I suppose the big key trait and characteristic that I would take for him was just being humble. The fella had won the Champions League, he'd won the Premier League, over 50 caps for England, and most weeks he was playing for the reserve team. So over in England at the time, the reserve team was mixed with young up-and-coming players, and probably 2, 3, 4 pros who hadn't been playing on a Saturday. And quite often some of the pros would come down and sort of toss the game off, not do it properly. But I mean, Teddy Sheringham, he'd scored at the Nou Camp in the Champions League final, and all of a sudden he's playing on a terrible pitch over at Dagenham with a load of 16, 17-year-olds who are nowhere near the level. And he's just unbelievable with everyone. And I certainly think it was great to sort of see off of him, someone who'd been there, done it, an incredible player, just how to be really humble and stay really down to earth and really grounded. And certainly for me as a young boy, sort of 16, 17, training with the first team every day, it was a big jump from youth team football to that first team. And he certainly helped me bridge the gap just by taking his time to sort of talk to me, give me extra advice, and always there to sort of do extras with me after training, which he didn't have to do. So number 2, Teddy Sheringham. What a player, what a man.
What a bad addition, mate. It's a good start. And Jack, just on that one, I'm curious. We speak sometimes about levels, right? And the best players, they have a certain level of accountability that they'll hold themselves to, right? Not for anybody else, but just for themselves, because they expect that, hey, this is who I am, this is the player that I want to be, this is what I expect from myself. like it seems like, as you said, regardless of whether it was in the first team or with the kids, like his desire to always replicate that was spot on. Like, is that fair to say?
Incredible, and that's day in, day out in training as well. He was always doing his core work after. He had fish and broccoli every day for lunch. When you talk about really living like a pro, he was your man. And probably one of the big things, one of my first ever sessions with the first team, I'll never forget. Alan Pardew had me up, but I was kind of playing a bit part, more of a server, jump in, jump out. You're doing an exercise of possession. When the ball went dead, I had to fire in a ball to Teddy Sheringham to set for some players coming on. So obviously I'm a little bit nervous. First one, I think a banana out the way. Second one, I hit him. And then he just comes over and as it were, he says, I can play a bit, don't you? He says, start putting a bit on it. So by the sort of end of the session, I'm absolutely smashing balls at him. And he didn't set a foot wrong. When you talk about detail and care on your pass and just leaving it soft for a midfielder or having to put a little bit more on it to break a line, he was the ultimate at it. And I suppose that comes from doing the basics day in, day out, training right, living right, and then obviously on a match day it becomes second nature.
Perfect. That's brilliant, mate. It's great insight. Number three?
Number three, for me, probably one of my heroes, and it's great to see him going to management now and doing so well at Fulham, and that'd be Scotty Parker. Testament to the man. He won Football Writers Player of the Year in England in a team that got relegated at West Ham. So that's kind of how good he was. But once again, certainly the man to set the standards in training. And I chose him for his leadership qualities, and not because he was always the most vocal and screaming and shouting and wanting to be noticed. He was more of a quiet leader, sort of lead by example person. Certainly in training, day in, day out, you'd approach it like a game. He would come through you if there was a tackle to be made. He would be pinging his passes about. And for me, I certainly learnt a lot of Scotty, just going about his business and not wanting to be the centre of attention. I mean, he was our best player we had by a mile at West Ham when I was playing. And as a young player coming through, I played on the right-hand side of the diamond with him at the base. And what I always remember is, one, you could always give him the ball whenever he had people around him. He'd always keep it and always want it under pressure if we were winning, if we were losing. So that real bravery to sort of take responsibility with that. But probably the big thing that stands out, if anyone ever gave me a little bit of jip or try and kick me, I remember playing against Lee Cattermole, and if anyone knows what he's like, he loves a tackle and loves giving it out. Lee Cattermole was kicking lumps at me. I just remember Scotty Parker absolutely smashed him, and he got up and gave me sort of a little wink, little smile, just to say, there you go, that'll do you. And kind of just taking care of people and not being really obvious with it. So for me, certainly being the team, definitely being the captain, and just a real good leader and kind of more a lead by example rather than a scream and shout at you.
I'm not sure I understand.
That was my watch, sorry. Yeah, so no, definitely Scotty Parker in there for me. Number four. So talk about different traits and different characteristics. For me, it was great. We had Michael Parkhurst on a Zoom call for the boys the other day. And he spoke about confidence, which kind of really got me thinking. And at West Ham, we signed a player called Ricardo Vaz-Tê, Portuguese, really good player, and it was the championship. Sorry?
The Coca-Cola kid. Did somebody sign him? Was it him? It was a kid.
I'm not. Yeah, have a little look into that one. But we signed Vaz, and I mean, he come from Barnsley in the Championship, scored a load of goals, and we were struggling to score. But I choose him just for his confidence, sheer confidence and self-belief. And some people might say, oh, it's a bit arrogant. But I think to sort of play to that level and to be one of them players who carries your team in terms of important goals, in terms of sort of stepping up and scoring when it really matters, I think you need that ultimate confidence, that ultimate self-belief, and probably bordering a little bit on arrogance, but knowing when to sort of rein it in. And Vaz was just such an interesting character. He kept himself to himself. He would do some really strange stuff in training, like he'd be out dribbling on his own, and people wouldn't understand what he was doing. But come to match day, and obviously he had his abs and his pecs and that, and he just looked a million. And you just look at him in the change rooms, and he just smelt of confidence. You knew he was going to go out there and have a good game. And I reckon if you asked him the moment before you walked out of that tunnel, are you the best player in the world? He'd probably say yes. And I mean, that season we signed him, I think we signed him in January, and he scored 12 goals between January and the end of the season. And ultimately he scored the winner in the playoff final at Wembley that got us promotion from the Championship back into the Premier League. So I'd have him in there for that confidence and self-belief.
Perfect. Number 5?
5, possibly a bit of a curveball here. A fella called Joey O'Brien. So we signed Joey O'Brien from Bolton Wanderers. He'd sort of come through at Bolton, but been in and out of the team a bit, out of contract, and we signed him. And he come in and he just blew me away. Just his professionalism, the way he managed himself, the way he carried himself. And I'm choosing Joey because there's a lot of talk now about resilience and grit. And for me, he embodies both of them big words that people want to chuck around. Because he had a real bad injury, a bad knee, could hardly train. So for me, as a young player with knee issues, looking to Joey and sort of seeing how he managed himself and looked after himself, and how he found a way to make himself available on a weekend, week in, week out, despite any troubles he might have experienced in a week with his knee flaring up or stiffness or soreness. And when you talk about real resilience, he went on to play over 90 games for West Ham. I think he got capped 5 or 6 times for Ireland. And this is someone who was probably playing on half a knee. And certainly later in my career, I really leaned on Joey and looked for him at times for inspiration. Certainly during some of them dark days when the boys would all be out training, having fun, and myself and Joey would be sat on a bike trying to get ourselves ready for the weekend. But he's another one who certainly maximised what he had, like being dealt a bad blow by having that bad knee, but he's still got over 200 games in England. And it's quite funny because he's actually still playing now for Shamrock Rovers over in Ireland. So I'd certainly have Joey in for his grit and his resilience, and plus he's the only defender in that mob, so he might give us more of a base to build from.
Something there to protect, because you've got no goalkeeper either. So
no, we don't need a goalie, rush goalie.
Jack, it's fascinating, and for me, I think to the players on the line, it's so important that you listen to the words that Jack has used to describe the people that he's selected, and the words resilience and grit are where we're going to go as we build more into your story, Jack. But for everybody else, when you're thinking of the type of teammate you want to be, or you're thinking of the type of characteristics, attributes, qualities that people will look to alongside them on a field, and coaches will look to for selection purposes, then the types of passion and enthusiasm that Jack's described Mark with, Teddy's humility and the standards that he sets himself, and obviously Scott's leadership qualities, but not just, as you said, not just the big tackle, but being brave enough to go and find the ball in what we call hot areas, right? No matter if I've got time and space or if I've got somebody up my backside, I'll still take the ball, I'll still protect you, I'll still give you an outlet. And obviously the stuff that you said about, Ricardo's confidence and Joey's resilience and grit, it's that kind of characteristic and the makeup of what we look for at the elite level now in terms of really fascinating insight, mate. And not a bad 5-a-side team to have out there. We'll have to compare it with some of the other ones that we've got. Jack, just moving on then into more about your story. And one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is, obviously, you've touched upon the injury in your intro, but not letting that define you and your future career. And the fact that you're still in football is obviously incredibly admirable. So who or what was it that was influential in you looking for positives and the opportunity in such a disappointing time that you were going through? So you said you started your coaching licenses, your badges when you were injured. Was staying in football always the passion? Was there somebody who you had in your ear suggesting it? Or, how easy would it have been to step away? Talk me through that, because I think lesser people would have maybe been uncomfortable with going on the journey that you did.
Yeah, I suppose for me that year I had out where I left West Ham and ended up going back to Peterborough was probably a real vital year in in sort of where I'm at now, in terms of potentially coming to terms that I might not be able to play football again, or for very much longer. Kind of planning for the future, but still at the same time going to work every day myself in the gym, making sure that I give myself every opportunity to do so. And then I had that brief stint at Peterborough, and I knew I was nowhere near it. So I could kind of say goodbye to football, but I would say probably that 2 or 3 week period after actually saying, from going to thinking I might have to retire to actually retiring, was really difficult. Really dark at times. It's tough being used to going into the change room every day, having the banter, going out on the training pitch, turning up at a match day, playing in front of thousands of fans. It's a great job, and something obviously I love doing. And then to have that thought of, right, it's actually over now, I need to get into the real world. It was certainly a difficult period. And I suppose I came to a bit of a crossroads. Do I go completely away from football? I hate it. It's robbed me of my career. I should be in my prime now, and I can hardly walk about. So, or do I stay around what I love? And I'd say I had that 2 or 3 week period where I hated it and wanted nothing to do with it. I couldn't watch it. I really struggled. And then I just woke up one day and kind of said, stop feeling sorry for yourself. You've been dealt this. Get on with it. And that was when I kind of decided, look, I need to be around football. I love it. It's my passion. It what gets me up every day, and it still gets me up now. And I suppose over time, probably over the following months, I kind of looked at it as more of a blessing. Okay, my career was cut short, but in that brief stint of career, I had relegation, I had promotion, I dealt with injuries, I lost my dad at a young age, I've been in the team, been out the team. So all these experiences that I had in such a short period, I thought could really sort of shape me in terms of my coaching. And then in terms of some of the managers I played with, I started to really assess then, and from the likes of Zola, his personal touch and his willingness to do extras after, Sam Allardyce, attention to detail, Eddie Howe, the way he made you feel going out on the pitch. And I kind of looked and thought, you know what, I've got all these tools, it's just about me now going on a bit of a journey, a bit of an experience, and trying to find the best way that I want to bring all this out. And certainly having to retire early, it has lit a fire within me in terms of wanting to get that feeling again of a real big match day, to be able to go out in front of thousands of fans and have a team set up the way I want to play and make big substitutions. That's what really drives me now, and sort of makes me want to get better and go to work and try and improve and read and jump on webinars and things like that, because I want to be the best that I can be, the best at my craft. And long term, I'd love to be out there in the fire, testing myself against some of the best coaches and managers in the world.
It's a fantastic vision, and I think, like you said, it's so important, but for all of us and players on the line. You know, again, going back to the concept of resiliency and grit, there's going to be times where it doesn't work. But some of our guests have spoken about, and the late great Tony DeCicco in this country spoke about soccer sessions being lessons and being able to take so much of what you experience on a football field and translate it to issues that you've got to overcome in life. So I think the ability for you to do that is, as I said, it's very admirable. But secondly, like, you've got now a bucket full of experiences that other people can only kind of, in all honesty, dream of, right? Many people, many coaches at your age haven't had that type of experience, and therefore, can't truly empathize with players who might be going through it. So, as you said, being able to kind of reframe and readjust and adapt so that you can maximize that for a positive thing is fantastic. And I want to turn now, Jackie. You opened with saying you kind of made a balls of your first stint at Peterborough, and you've got 20 kids in front of you, and you're like, okay, what do I do? Because I was one of the lads, and I was in the dressing room, and now I'm responsible for these young players. So I guess some of my questions on this are, did you think you knew how difficult a job coaching was before you were in it? And then if you could, what mistakes have you made along the way, and what have you found most difficult with being on the opposite side of the touchline?
Yeah, do you know what? It's a really good question. As I said, I was useless. I really didn't understand how much actually went into it until I'm out there actually trying to set up a box size for a rondo, and I'm questioning myself, right, I've got 10 players, how big should it be? And I suppose being around good people really sort of made me see it, because obviously I would have been out there still doing stuff thinking I'm good, when actually even now I look at myself and think, bloody hell, I've got so much to learn and so much to go, which is great. You know, I'd hate to sit and think, oh, I'm the finished article, I know I'm great and all of this. So I think for me it's always good to sort of try and put yourself around good people, possibly on a similar path, who test you and push you to try and be the best you can be. And as I said, I'm very fortunate. I'm in a good position now where I'm in a job that I love. I'm around good people every day, and I've got people who are pushing me to try and improve and try and get better. I suppose the real blessing for me potentially is being in youth football at the moment. I'm not hiding behind the fact that long term I do want to be a head coach and do want to be in senior football, but at the moment, in terms of being around in youth football, it's great because you get opportunities to potentially make mistakes. You're out on the grass an awful lot. We probably spend more time on the grass as a youth coach than you would as a senior coach or a senior manager, and you get opportunities to try stuff and to make your mistakes and learn from them. And as I said, certainly that first year at Peterborough, I was all over the place, but being in and around good people, the likes of Ryan Semple and Kieran Scarf, who really sort of helped me over them early bumps, and then once again going somewhere completely different to West Ham and learning off great people and being on them coaching courses where you just get to interact and talk with people and see different things. I think it opens your mind. And even now coming to Atlanta, one of the big draws coming to Atlanta was to just really step out of my comfort zone and really test myself and see what a completely different style of football's like. And I'll never forget listening to people talk. They always say the importance of not getting comfortable and not playing it safe. And obviously for me, it's probably the biggest risk, leaving somewhere where I'd been 10 years as a player and as a coach and coming somewhere completely new and starting again. But I'm loving it. It's pushing me, and as I said, I'm around great people day in, day out who are still helping me get better.
Even those with dodgy lockdown mustaches, Mr. Lowry, apparently.
He's probably bumped off.
This isn't about me, guys, or my mustache.
So tell us then, obviously, a career in the game, and a former international, former professional. What, talk to the aspirational coaches that are looking at you and saying, okay, a career at a pro club as a youth team coach would be something that I'd aspire to. Like, was it, you mentioned box like sizes of rondo areas. Was it, did you find it difficult to know how much to speak to players, speak at versus speak to, let them struggle versus fix problems? Like, can you dive in a little bit just to?
Yeah, I think even now I probably have a hint of OCD. Matt would tell you my sessions, I like them visually. I like them to look good. I like the cone straight. The bibs need to be right. It needs to look good and feel good. And certainly even now, I really struggle in terms of if I put in a session on and I know the outcomes that I want and things I want to be seeing from it. And if the boys aren't quite grasping it, if maybe I've pitched it a bit too high, or it's just one of them days where it's not really clicking, I still find myself struggling in terms of not jumping in and not trying to correct it, when actually probably the biggest part about being a good youth coach is allowing the kids to make mistakes and allowing them to find their own pathway and journey to solve the problem and fix the problem. So when it comes to a Saturday, they're not looking at you for help. They're actually trying to solve the problem and fix it themselves. So certainly a lot of work around that has been really important. I think as a player, I was always someone who spoke so much, just talking rubbish. I would nearly commentate myself through a game, so playing alongside me must have been hard work. And certainly on the touchline now, I find it hard at times not to commentate or jump in and try and give all the orders, do you know what I mean? Because all that work in the week, I suppose the big thing is seeing if the boys have grasped the concepts and whether they can actually go out and do it under pressure on a match day when potentially there's 3 points on the line. So finding that balance, I suppose, from using my experiences to jump in and say, hey, look, it could be like this, to actually saying, right, go on in, boys, you go and do it, find your way. If it fails, no problem. And I suppose going back to Teddy Sheringham, being humble enough to say, right, maybe my session's just not great tonight. I've just got to accept it, take it on the chin, and move on, and make sure I review it and do it better next time.
Yeah, I think it's a great message, mate. And I'm curious, obviously, you know, us mere mortals maybe didn't have the same career in the game. So is there a challenge with assuming that the kids should be able to do something that came easy to you? Like, how have you found that? Like, you know, understanding where they are, and maybe that it wasn't quite as easy as it was to you as a player. Like, did that tie into, you know, the patience stuff and not trying to like?
Yeah, I suppose so. Certainly coming over here, obviously I come over and got a grasp of the level, but you don't really know until you're in there day in, day out, and you're actually working with these kids. And thankfully, I was blown away by the level, certainly of some of the individuals I get to work with. So I feel very blessed in terms of that. And I suppose with me, what Matt might tell you, I'm very enthusiastic, and I like people to try things, and I don't mind people making mistakes. But what I really struggle to get my head around, if players aren't working 100%, if they're not giving their all, and if they're not just really trying and having a good go at things, that's when I really get frustrated. But in terms of making mistakes and jumping in and trying to correct things, it's that golden question, is it? When do you do it? When don't you do it? And I suppose as coaches, as aspiring coaches, we're always going to be questioning ourselves and kind of doubting ourselves. But it comes back to that point again about being around good people. Obviously, Matt's a wonderful coach, and the great thing for me as well is getting opportunity to have Tony on my shoulder. All that experience that we spoke about before the call. He might just get in my ear during a session or just say something, and it just gets you thinking, and yeah, maybe I could have done it this way, maybe I could have done it that way. And if you haven't got the opportunity for people around you like that, maybe you should video your sessions and ask for feedback from people you trust, because people always see things slightly different. And I think the biggest thing in football and soccer over here is that we need to be open, we need to be able to talk to people, and you need to be able to take advice on the chin. And at times you might not like the feedback you get, but that's how you grow and that's how you get better.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a really good point there, mate, about, you know, you acknowledge there is a significant difference between just being a good player and obviously that transitioning into being a good coach and the humility side of it. Because one of the questions that I asked Tony was, you know, how is it to manage, you know, somebody with your playing background? Because obviously the level of the game that you've experienced as a player on the grass is different. But obviously what you're saying is if you can find, you know, it's being humble enough to accept that coaches, directors of coaching, technical directors, whatever the position they find themselves in, you know, if you can embrace the experience that they've had or the guidance that they can give you just to tweak something, then it's, you know, it's that ability probably to connect or make it maybe that little bit more understandable for the players. It's obviously something that, you know, seems to be of great benefit if it can be done well. So again, super advice. Got a question. I'm going to turn this to the audience because it's very similar to where I was going to go. So Chris P pops up. You've obviously worked with players in youth academies, both at home in the UK and here now in the US. So is there anything that you can put your finger on that is really different between the two cultures? Is there anything that you would, you know, take from the UK and bring to the US or vice versa?
Really, really good question. I suppose for me, I'm still kind of getting to grips with the whole system and how it works. I would say probably the big difference that I've seen is the kids in England, if they're in an academy, they actually believe they're going to be a professional footballer. There's a pathway, there's history of people coming through, etc., going on to make careers in the game. Whereas here it's quite interesting to see kids at different levels and different stages, because some of the kids I'm working with now, their goal might be not to become a professional, but to get the best scholarship they can get, to go to the best school and get that education. It's really pleasing now to see with my group that lots of them do have aspirations to be professionals, and it's obviously great for Atlanta, where it's so new now, to start seeing the players coming through. Obviously, to see George Campbell make his debut at the start of the season, it just might spark something in one or two of the young boys that I've got. Hold up, George was travelling with us last week to Miami 19s. Now all of a sudden he's playing in front of 70,000. So in terms of trying to, I suppose, sell the boys the dream that, yes, education is vital, it's massive. If you can get a scholarship and go that route, great. But by the way, there might be a possibility for you to go on and become a professional football through the homegrown, through the ATL2, and eventually go on and carve a really good career by being a professional footballer. So certainly that difference has been a big thing. But I've been really impressed with the kids in America, probably their willingness to learn and try to take on advice and just to try and listen. I think at times over in England, Matt Hansen will probably tell you, some of the kids in the academies can be quite hard work. They're at a professional club. As I said, they all think they're going to be professional footballers, and even someone with a playing background trying to tell these kids something, you can just see them looking at you blankly thinking, nah, shut up. No, I'm not listening to you. Whereas over here, I'll probably say that 90% of the kids, you feel like they want to learn, they want to get better, they want to improve, and they certainly have that willingness to be the very best they can be, which has been really impressive. And obviously now for a young coach to get to work with these players who actually want to listen and want to learn, it's a match made in heaven.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's funny that you kind of address that. I remember personally my first year in America, it's 12 summers ago now, and I said I was astonished at I guess the respect probably is a good word shown towards coaches and teachers. So I think the US, obviously there's probably US players listening right now, and I think they're in a great place if they can continue to demonstrate that humility and eagerness to grow and develop with then, maybe it's again that belief and that true ambition to be a pro, or the hunger to just be immersed in the game. How have you found that with the kids, watching? Is there enough of a knowledge base? Would you kind of encourage the younger players to just put themselves in and drop everything football? Like, what's the balance there that you think needs to be?
Yes, do you know what? It's a really good question. I think wherever you go, and obviously if there's players on it, there's always going to be kids who are just completely in love with the game. They love the game. They go home, they want to watch it. They want to play it. They want to play PlayStation, but they want to play. Do you know what I mean? There's kids who just live, dream, breathe football. And, I mean, I was that kid. I used to take a football to bed with me most nights. But that's not everyone, and I think it's having an understanding of that. I mean, James Tompkins, for example, my best friend growing up at West Ham, went on to play over 100 times for West Ham, over 100 times for Crystal Palace. And he loved football, don't get me wrong, he loved playing it, and he'd be out there every morning with me, we'd be smashing balls in the afternoon, working on things. But he would never, ever want to watch a game of football. Would hate talking about football, wouldn't want to watch a game, wouldn't be playing Football Manager, wouldn't really care what was going on in football. All he did was enjoy playing it. So I think having that understanding that some kids will have that drive and that passion and just that real love for the game, and some kids might not, but they might be very talented at it, and they might be able to carve an opportunity within the game. And that opportunity might not be in a professional player, but it might spark something that one of these young boys or young girls might want to go on to become a coach in the game. And let me tell you, that's an interesting and a real fun and really enjoyable path too.
Yeah, and I think it brings up a really interesting point, because I look at, and obviously now the EPP in England, there's more clearly defined exit routes and kind of care that's placed on the well-being of players. But I think with the ages that you're working at, those that have got professional dreams that don't make it, how do you then deal with, readdressing that football, soccer, it's not who you are, it's what you do. Right? It's not, being a soccer player isn't what's going to define you as a person. It's something that obviously you're very good at and you do, but it doesn't, failing and not making the grade doesn't make you suddenly a terrible person. So how do you, with the age groups where you're talking about kids that might have to be released, or focusing on guiding them towards maybe a college pathway, like how's the balance of how do you approach those kind of challenging situations? And
I think that's a real good one, because I think as coaches that's really difficult, and I suppose the biggest thing for us as coaches is just to try and be honest with the kids throughout. If they're not playing, you're not playing because of this. If you're not working hard enough in training, you're not working hard enough because of this. And I think as long as you've got that honest and open dialogue with players throughout their time with you, I think they'll kind of know where they stand all the time. The worst thing I felt as a player was not knowing where you were with a manager. And certainly playing under someone like Big Sam, you knew exactly where you stood. If you were doing well, he'd tell you you'd be in the team. If you weren't, he would tell you. So for me now, I think just trying to have that honesty with the players and letting them know where they're at. So if they're not in the team week in, week out, that maybe they might not be able to forge a career in football. So maybe they have to start looking elsewhere. And I suppose for us as a club now, it's important to ensure we've got them pathways and have them conversations so that they're able to go on and be successful in life. But hopefully them lessons that you speak about and the lessons that you're teaching them day in, day out, that resilience, that humility, that willingness to go in, work hard and be the best you can be. These are all key messages that you should keep with you throughout your life. Whether you're a salesman, if you're a salesman, you want to be the best salesman. If you're a nurse, you want to be the best nurse. You've got to go to work. You've got to work hard to get your rewards and get better. And hopefully all them key messages, they might not come out right on time when they're needed, but as people go along in their lives and their careers, hopefully they will come out at some point. And I would say certainly in England that they find it really difficult. There's young kids at academies who've been there from 7, 8 years old, go all the way through, get a scholarship at 16, and at 18 they're told that all of a sudden they're not good enough. They're not good enough to make the grade, and trying to find a new club's difficult. So definitely over there you need to try and make sure that the kids are still focusing on other interests, that they're still getting an education, and at times it's difficult, and that for me is probably one of the biggest challenges for the game in England at the moment.
Yeah, and this is just off of what you've said. Where do you, and purely personal opinion, where do you fall on that example? So a kid's been in your program for 10 years, and then after years you're telling them that they're not going to make the grade. Is that on them, or is that on you as not necessarily you as a coach for 10 years, but is it on the club? Is it, if you've had the ownership over this player and you've tried to, have every opportunity to mold them, develop them the best you can, like where do you think the lines?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, because let's be honest, you're working at the elite end of football here, and the kids who do go on and make the grade will go on to be successful, be millionaires, and obviously play in the Premier League. But you're talking about less than 1% in England, and over in the MLS, I'm sure the numbers are similar. The kids who have come through that pathway and gone in. So it's just having that honesty, that real honest dialogue, letting them know that it is tough. It's a difficult journey. You need to be supremely talented, but you also need to be very lucky, and you need to be in the right place at the right time, possibly to get that breakthrough. And if you don't, you need to make sure you're prepared. And as clubs, it's about being supportive and making sure we've got exit routes and we're having them conversations. And I suppose it's tough to say at what age as well they're going to start really showing how good they are and what they're made of, because Declan Rice is in the news a lot at the moment. He got released from Chelsea at 14. At 16 at West Ham, he was touch and go whether he'd get a scholarship. Probably average during his first year as a scholarship. There was a player, Reece Oxford, who was playing in the first team at 16 at West Ham. Deck was always in his shadows, and now you look at Deck, he's played over 100 games. Probably a good chance he'll go and get sold for 50+ million. And he didn't really start flourishing and showing everyone how good he was till he was probably 18, 19. So it definitely comes round to being good, working hard, having the right traits, but also having that touch of luck along the journey as well.
Yeah, and I think the luck piece is, you've got to earn the right to basically take that bit of luck with both hands, though, right? And I think that to the players that are listening, even if it's not, even if you're not getting it as fast as you want the opportunities, you keep grinding, you keep digging in, you keep clinging on to coattails of people, you keep giving yourself a chance, so that when it is presented to you, you can grasp it. Because I think that's something that sometimes is overlooked, and there's all the comparisons of, it shouldn't be me v you, it should be like me with you. As teammates, we're going to push ourselves to get better, like iron sharpens iron, those kind of ideas of, don't look, somebody, I forget who to give it credit to, but they said, look sideways for inspiration, like,
Yeah.
what are they, you're not looking sideways and being like, oh, I'm now going to kind of beat myself up because it's not me, but how can I kind of take the lead of what good people are doing around me and make sure that if the opportunity is afforded to me, I'm ready. So yeah, mate, really good insight. I just want to kind of start to close out on, you obviously said at the start of the conversation that the move was one way you felt to the US, was one way you felt if you didn't do it now, you probably never would. So my question is, why America? Why Atlanta? How did you choose to be in Georgia?
Yeah, no, good. It's a good one. As I said earlier, I've always been one of them sick people who doesn't really like being comfortable for too long. Always wanting more, always pushing, and that was as a kid, as a player. Now I think as a coach, and as I said, being at West Ham for sort of 10, 11 years as a young kid, as a young player, as a player, and then coming back as a coach, it kind of come full circle. And I just felt there was an opportunity for me to possibly get comfortable there and rest. And look, I'm still a very young coach. I'm still learning, and I feel like there's an awful lot more for me to do and go and learn. And just feel the opportunity to come to Atlanta just come at the right time. Completely out of my comfort zone, completely different. Move to a new country, start all over again. But I wouldn't have done it stupidly. It obviously had to be a real good opportunity. And I spoke to Tony Annan quite a lot, and I know you guys have had Tony on, and he's an incredible boss and an incredible man, and someone I really enjoy working with. But speaking to him in them early stages, just getting an idea and a taste of it, and then I come out and I was absolutely blown away. Got to come to the GA Cup, but the facilities, the standard of football, and just the good people around the training ground. And I'm not just talking about other coaches, I'm talking about people who work with the community staff, the chefs. It's just nice being around a good atmosphere and nice people. And then you start looking further afield and you see the Mercedes-Benz. And I think being able to be part of a project that's in its early days, I think Atlanta's in its 5th year now, to be able to be part of that and potentially have an opportunity to play my part and help mould it and take it where it needs to be was a real exciting opportunity, and something I took the opportunity to jump at. And yes, it was a difficult situation, a difficult decision, but I'm really glad I've done it. I'm really glad I've jumped, and hopefully over this last sort of 6-7 months I've kicked on again as a coach, and will continue learning and on my journey.
Yeah. And are you conscious, Jack, of, you said like you like to challenge yourself and be out of your comfort zone. It's messages that you're giving to your players, I assume, daily as well, right? It's that kind of concept of, maintaining safe uncertainty in a practice and keeping them on like the edge of their comfort zone to really push and stretch them. Are you conscious at all of, being the example and living by the words that you challenge them? Like,
yeah, I think it's really important as young coaches or as coaches or as people, we live by our values. And as I said, I'm very enthusiastic, and I like to think that comes out in my sessions, the way I coach, the way I want to be it. I like risk takers. I like players who, as you said, receiving the hot zone. I like that because I like that as a player, and now I like it as a coach to see the players who actually do it. So certainly trying to live by your values is really important, and just trying to be consistent with it. I think the worst thing for young players now, if there's any on the line, is having people who are inconsistent. if you've got a hard coach, you want him to be hard on you all the time. You don't want him up and down, because you never know where to take him. If he's enthusiastic, be enthusiastic. If you're really detailed, be really detailed. I think that inconsistency can throw people sometimes. And for me, consistent messages, being consistent as a person, not getting too high when we win or too low when we lose is really important. And we try and teach these traits to the players, and hopefully it's the right stuff. If it's not, they might take one thing completely different from me as they move on to their next coach. It might be something completely away from the pitch. And I suppose as coaches and as a club, we're trying to give these youngsters little jigsaw pieces so they can slowly make up their puzzle. And they might take one thing from Matt Lowry, probably one of the best, most detailed coaches I've ever seen work. I'm completely different. I'm probably more free and a bit more out there. Tony's probably toughness, they'll probably take that. And it's just trying to give them all the pieces, so when it comes to George Campbell stepping out in front of 70,000, he feels equipped and he feels ready to face the challenge head on.
I love that. I love the jigsaw analogy. I might steal that one. That's good problem. So I'm going to go back. I gave you a quick introduction to one of our good friends and an avid West Ham fan, and Loz pops up to say you've obviously played under a lot of different managers in Alan Pardew, Kerbishley, Zola, Avram Grant, Big Sam. What have you taken from those people into the way that you coach? Like, or is it is your coaching based on the sessions that you enjoyed as a player and you want to recreate that? Like, how?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of everything, really. I mean, being an ex-player, I feel like I'm very fortunate, especially to be able to see what it looks like at the very top end and work with so many great people. And I'd say taking little bits from coaches that you enjoyed for me is massively important. And I think Big Sam, his attention to detail was incredible in terms of knowing exactly what you're about to face, exactly what you need to do, your roles, responsibilities. You knew 9 times out of 10, if you did what he wanted, you'd win the game. As I said, Zola had that real personal touch, would be doing extras with the youngsters, would want to know about your family, your wife, your kids, all of that stuff. Eddie Howe made you feel great. And probably Gary Speed just had the most amazing aura around him. It was incredible. You just feel 10 foot tall when you were stood in the same room as him. And it's hard to put your finger on that, but taking little things that you did like, things that you didn't like, and I suppose it's just important to really be authentic and try and find your own way and put your own twist on things. And I'm 31 now, I'm fairly young still into the game, so look, I'm still learning, I'm still making mistakes, but hopefully I'll find a way and get to where I need to get to.
I'm sure you will, mate. I'm sure you will. This is an hour up, mate, so what I'm going to do here is just turn it over to coaches or players that are still listening. If there's anything specific that you want to ask Jack, obviously very conscious of his time and how generous he's been sharing an hour of it with us already. If there's anything, there's the message function at the top of your screen that you can kind of just pop a question in the box, and we can try get it answered if there's something that hasn't been covered. So I'll give you guys 10 seconds or so if there's anything at all to come through. Maybe you've just dazzled them for an hour, mate. Maybe.
No,
I think there's a lot of gratitude there. But okay, so Jack, what I'll do, mate, is I'll just say on behalf of obviously myself and Beyond Pulse, everybody listening now or on record later, the players and the coaches, thank you ever so much, mate. The insight was brilliant. You just touched on the word authentic. I think the authenticity and in how you've presented that, it's just a clear indication as to the type of coach that you would be and clearly why you're obviously doing big things already. I'm going to let Ian jump in, and he says, just the final question. Obviously, we've spoken about some concepts, the psychosocial characteristics of players. How much do you try to incorporate concepts of sports psychology within everyday, like day-to-day training environments, match day prep, obviously, within your coaching on a broader level?
Yeah, good question. I suppose as coaches, you're psychologists as well, because I would say probably 60-70% is probably dealing with the players' emotions and how you make them feel. Obviously, you need to be good on the grass. Tactically, you need to be good, but ultimately, you need to be good at managing these kids or these players and trying to get the best out of them. And I suppose the big thing is just trying to get to know the player as a person as well, and trying to find out what they need, whether they're having a tough time at home, whether they're the sort of player who reacts well off criticism, whether they're the sort of player who needs to be boosted and made to feel 10 foot tall. And I think if you can tap into each player as an individual and how you need to manage them, and ultimately you just want to get the best out of them and to make them feel good. So when they go out on that pitch on a weekend, they feel like they can accomplish anything. And I touched on it earlier with Zola. I mean, as a young lad, he took time to do extra training sessions with me. He gave me a real opportunity in the team, and every time I went out on the pitch, I felt like I'd want to run through a brick wall for him. And obviously, as coaches, we're not going to be able to get into everyone, but if we can sort of reach out to maybe 5, 10, if you're doing great, 15 of the kids, then you're doing a fantastic job. And I think it's really important, as I said, to get to know the person you're dealing with, not just as a player, not just as an asset, but as a human being as well.
Yeah, I think it's great advice, and I think it speaks nicely. Michael Beale was on a few weeks ago, and Mick was talking about the gift of the best coaches is for almost every session for the players to think it's built just around them and their needs, right? Regardless of you speaking to a unit of forwards and it's something to do with, finishing, they all think it's for them. But maybe the midfielders, they've had a chat and it's all about their assists, so they think it's for them. And just having the ability to, like you said, lift people up and present that kind of, we're all in and we're willing to obviously do everything we can for the coach. And then last one, Sean is actually a player at the club that I run, and Sean's popped up to say, what advice would you give to a midfielder, a centre midfielder that's looking to get a little bit more physical without losing your head, without becoming reckless in a game? So both with and without the ball, what's the line?
Real good question. I suppose just playing with that intensity, whether it's with the ball or without the ball, and it doesn't need to be that you're trying to take your opponent on every time you get it. I'd use Paul Scholes as a real good example for me. When you talk about real intensity, he was intense even in his layoffs. You went tight to him, he'd play one touch. You give him space, he'd hit a 50-yard diag right on the money. So really just trying to be intense and have that real quality in everything you do. And I would also say being able to outrun your opponents. I know it's really silly and really basic, but as a midfielder, if you're able to get around the pitch and you're making your opponent who you're playing against feel like, Jesus Christ, he's fit, he's full of running. God, I'm not going to be able to keep up with him all day. Slowly and slowly, you can just break them down, and you'll just see in their eyes, there'll be a point where they're completely going, you've got one over them. So having that fitness as a centre midfielder is massive, that stamina, the ability to be able to run, and playing with that real quality and real intentness in everything you do.
Perfect. And it's that same thing, right? Little victories and the idea that you said right at the start of the marginal gains, and it'll show itself. So if you're there and you can do it game after game, and first minute and 89th, 90th minute, then hopefully you'll kind of get the result that you want. So Jack, I'm gonna cut it there, mate. I'm just very grateful of your time, and I don't want to steal too much of it. So to everybody listening, obviously thank you for joining. We promised you a treat, and it's definitely been that. And obviously Jack, to you, obviously thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. And I'll make sure to obviously get this up, recorded and posted so people can catch up if they missed it. And then to the rest of you guys, we have Jack Barmby, current Phoenix Rising player, former Man United youth prospect, who's with us on Wednesday, and then Mark Sampson, former England women's manager and current assistant at Stevenage on Thursday, both at 1 p.m. So hopefully you can join us again there. But Jack, thanks a bunch, mate. Really appreciated, and delighted to have had you on.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it, Tom.